What happens when you criticize your husband's family, only for him to take it too far and retaliate in a way you never expected? How does a thoughtless comment turn your life upside down, leading to legal actions that leave you shocked and powerless? Before we dive deeper into this story, I have one small request. Please subscribe, drop a like, comment, and hit that hype button to boost this channel so more people can discover these incredible stories. My name is Kendra Lytton, and it's hard to believe I'm sitting here writing this now, but I guess I have no choice. I don't know how it all went so wrong. One moment, everything felt perfectly fine, until I said the thing I shouldn't have said. It was just one sentence, one careless comment, and everything shattered. And yet, here I am, trying to make sense of it all. Austin, my husband, and I had been together for 7 years. It wasn't always perfect, but I thought we had a solid marriage. We were comfortable, living in a nice house, no real problems in sight, but I've always been a little, difficult. I'd complain about things I didn't like, and he'd listen patiently, never really getting angry, just nodding and offering his perspective. We never really fought. Maybe that was the problem. Maybe we were too comfortable, too predictable. I don't know. But I do know that I started feeling like something was missing, and that's when everything spiraled out of control. It wasn't that Austin was a bad person. He wasn't. He's a good man, a good husband. But there was something about him, something that had been bothering me for a while. It wasn't anything I could put my finger on at first, but the more I thought about it, the more I realized it was his family. They were, ordinary. Too ordinary. His parents were nice people, but they didn't have the kind of wealth or status that I was used to. It wasn't like my family, where everything was polished and perfect. They didn't have the same kind of house or lifestyle. And honestly, it used to bother me more than I cared to admit. When Austin and I first got together, I could overlook it. He was charming, and he treated me well. But over time, the difference between his family and mine began to bother me more. I felt like he should have been able to provide more, to be more successful. And it wasn't just him, it was his whole family. His mum, Margaret, was kind, but didn't seem to understand the finer things in life. She'd talk about her garden, her knitting projects, and I'd smile and nod, but inside, I just couldn't relate. It wasn't what I was used to. I guess I resented it. I resented them for not being like me. It came to a head one evening when Austin and I were having dinner with his parents. His mum was talking about the price of some plant she had bought at the local nursery, and I couldn't help myself. I made a joke about how it was hard to believe someone could spend that much on a plant when they probably couldn't afford a nice vacation or anything fun. Austin shot me a look, but I ignored it. I kept talking about how his family just didn't seem to understand how to handle money, or have the kind of luxuries that people in our circle had. I mean, seriously, I said, do they ever even splurge on themselves? I didn't expect it to cause such a reaction. Austin's face went blank, and he barely said anything for the rest of the evening. His parents were quiet too, clearly uncomfortable, but I didn't care. I thought they'd brush it off. I thought Austin would just laugh it off later and tell me I was being dramatic. But he didn't. That night, as we drove home, he didn't say a word. The silence between us felt suffocating, like I was underwater, and every breath I tried to take was a little harder. When we got home, Austin went straight to the bedroom and closed the door. I stood there for a second, trying to figure out what had just happened. My mind was racing. I didn't think I'd said anything all that bad. I hadn't meant it in the way it probably came across, but I didn't know how to explain it to him. I was frustrated, and sometimes I didn't know where to put it. So, I just said things that I thought would get a reaction, something to get his attention. I waited a little while before I knocked on the door. When he didn't answer, I opened it. He was sitting on the edge of the bed, staring at the floor. He looked so small, so lost, and for the first time, I felt guilty. But I didn't want to feel guilty. I didn't think I should. I'm sorry, I said, forcing the words out. I didn't mean it the way it sounded. He didn't look up. No, he said quietly. You meant it exactly how it sounded, and that's the problem. I stood there, dumbfounded. What's the problem? I was just saying what everyone's thinking. You know how they are. They're so basic. They're my family, he said, his voice almost breaking. They're the people who raised me, and you don't get to talk about them like that. I tried to respond, but no words came. I had never seen him like this. He was always the calm one, the patient one. I never had to worry about him getting angry or upset. But now, he was pulling away from me. The space between us felt like an ocean. He stood up and walked past me, heading toward the kitchen. I followed him, desperate to fix it, to make him understand that I didn't mean to hurt him. I was frustrated with my life, frustrated with the way things were going, and I was lashing out, but I couldn't find the words to explain any of it. I'm sorry, I repeated, this time softer, trying to reach him, to get him to see that I wasn't really angry at him or his family. It wasn't personal, it was just everything. But he wasn't listening. Instead, he grabbed his keys off the counter and turned to me. I'm going to my mum's for a while, he said, his voice steady, but there was a hurt in it that I hadn't heard before. I watched as he left the house. My heart raced. He had never left like this before. He had never walked away when things got tough. And suddenly, I was alone in the house, the silence filling every corner of the room. I sat down on the couch, replaying everything in my mind, trying to understand where it had all gone wrong. I wasn't sure how to fix it. Part of me was angry at him for being so sensitive, but another part of me knew I had crossed a line. I had hurt him. I didn't mean to, but that didn't matter now. What mattered was that he was gone, and I was left with the consequences of my words. The next few days were a blur. Austin didn't come home that night or the next. He barely responded to my texts. I felt a sense of panic building inside me, but I didn't know what to do with it. I kept telling myself that he'd come around, that he'd forgive me, but the more I tried to reach out, the more distant he became. I didn't understand. I still didn't understand. All I wanted was to feel validated. I wanted him to tell me that I was right to be frustrated, that my feelings mattered. Instead, I felt like I was losing him, and I wasn't ready for that. But what was I supposed to do now? I had already said the things that I couldn't take back. The days after Austin left the house were like something out of a dream, a nightmare, really. Everything felt surreal. I had this sinking feeling in my stomach, a mix of guilt and frustration. I kept thinking that he would come back, that he would realize I didn't mean to hurt him, and we'd just pick up where we left off. I even convinced myself that I was the one in the right, that it was his fault for not understanding me. But deep down, I knew things had changed. Austin didn't come back that night, or the next. I told myself it wasn't a big deal. He was probably staying with his parents to cool off, to get away from the tension at home. It wasn't the first time we'd had a fight, but this felt different. It wasn't like the usual disagreements we'd had before. This time, I had pushed him too far. I had humiliated him, in front of his family, in front of everyone. I'd been cruel, and he was hurt, more than I had anticipated. But instead of doing what I expected him to do, come home, apologize, and just move on, he seemed to be pulling further away. I tried texting him again. A simple message. I'm sorry, Austin. I didn't mean to hurt you. I waited, but he didn't respond. That's when I decided I needed to talk to someone. I called Sarah, my best friend. I needed someone to tell me that I wasn't the one who was wrong, that I wasn't the one who had made a huge mistake. Sarah, I said when she finally picked up, I really messed up. I said some things to Austin about his family. I didn't mean it, but it's like he's just gone. You didn't mean it. Kendra, you've been saying stuff like that for months. Maybe not as directly, but you've always looked down on them. You've always thought you were better than his family. You can't just say it wasn't your fault now. I could feel her judgment even over the phone, but it wasn't the words I wanted to hear. I know, but I was frustrated, okay? And I didn't think it would be this big of a deal. I thought he'd just laugh it off. She sighed. Well, it's a big deal, Kendra. You can't keep belittling people and expecting them not to react. I hated hearing her say that. But I don't understand why he's acting like this. He's never been this cold. I've apologized. I've tried to reach out. You can't just keep apologizing when you hurt someone, Kendra. It doesn't work like that. Maybe you need to give him space to figure out if this relationship is what he wants anymore. I didn't want to hear that. I didn't want to hear that Austin might be done with me. It felt like a betrayal in itself. I needed control. I needed him to come back, to see things my way. So I tried again. I sent him another message. Please talk to me. I can't fix this unless you tell me what's going on. Nothing. The silence was suffocating. I couldn't handle it. I didn't want to face the reality of him being gone, of him deciding he was done with me. I couldn't lose him. I called him once more that night, straight to voicemail. I left a message, my voice shaking. Austin, I know you're mad. I don't even blame you for being upset. But I need you to come home. We can fix this. I swear, I'll do whatever it takes. The next morning, I woke up hoping, praying that he'd come back. Maybe he'd send me a text. Maybe he'd show up at the door and tell me it was all over, but that we could talk. But he didn't. Instead, my phone buzzed. I picked it up, hoping it was him, but it wasn't. It was a notification from Austin's lawyer. I stared at the screen, heart pounding. Notice of consultation. I couldn't breathe. I opened the message, and my hand shook as I read it. Austin had consulted a lawyer about divorce proceedings. My stomach dropped, and the world around me seemed to spin. I sat there, frozen, trying to make sense of it. Divorce? He couldn't be serious. This wasn't supposed to happen. He was supposed to forgive me, like he always did. I couldn't accept the reality. This couldn't be happening. It felt like the ground was being ripped out from underneath me. But deep down, I knew he had every right to be angry. I knew I had pushed him too far. I had made a joke about his family, made fun of them in front of him and in front of his friends. I had crossed a line, and now I was paying the price for it. The thing was, I didn't want to pay the price. I didn't want to lose him. I needed to fix this. I needed to find a way to get him back. I tried to push away the panic that was rising in my chest. I needed to focus. I called his parents. I didn't know why I thought that would help, but I called them anyway. I needed someone on my side, someone who could help me make him understand that this whole thing had gotten out of hand. His mom answered. Kendra, I don't know what to say, she said, her voice trembling. We're all so hurt by what you said. Austin hasn't talked to us like this in a long time. He's devastated. I could feel her disappointment through the phone, and it cut deeper than anything else. I didn't mean it like that, Margaret, I swear. I was frustrated. I didn't mean to hurt him. Please, can you talk to him? Can you get him to come back? I don't know if I can, I really don't. You need to talk to him. You need to make things right. Her words hit me like a ton of bricks. She wasn't going to fix this for me. I had to fix it myself. I ended the call and collapsed on the couch, feeling completely and utterly alone. There was no one to turn to. Austin was already making plans without me. His lawyer's message made that clear. He was done with me. And somehow, I was the one who had made this happen. I could feel the weight of the realization pressing down on me. I didn't know how I was supposed to fix this. I didn't know what was going to happen next. But one thing was certain. Austin was not coming back to me without a fight. And this time, the fight was going to be something entirely different, something I wasn't prepared for. I sat in silence, the quiet in the house deafening, knowing I had pushed my husband too far. There was no going back. And now the consequences were here. The next few days felt like an eternity. I tried to hold it together, pretending everything was fine, but deep down, I knew it wasn't. Every time I reached for my phone, I half expected to see a text from Austin saying, "Let's talk," or "I'm sorry." But nothing came. The silence was suffocating, and the weight of what I had done began to settle over me like a heavy cloud. I had pushed Austin away, and now he was out of reach. I tried to convince myself that he was just being dramatic. After all, wasn't it just a little comment about his family? Sure, I had humiliated him, but I didn't think it was that big of a deal. In my mind, he should have been able to move on, just like I always did. But this time, it was different. This time, I had crossed a line, and I was starting to realize just how much damage I had done. I decided to confront him. I couldn't keep waiting for him to come back on his own terms. I needed to do something, anything, to make him see that I wasn't the villain here. So, I showed up at his parents' house. It was a bold move, but I was desperate. I knocked on the door, my heart pounding in my chest. When Margaret answered, she looked surprised but not entirely welcoming. "Kendra," she said, her voice cautious, "what are you doing here?" "I need to talk to Austin," I said, my voice shaking. "I know he's upset, but I didn't mean what I said. I was frustrated and I said something stupid. Please, can you just let me explain?" Margaret hesitated for a moment, her gaze flickering between me and the door. "Austin doesn't want to see anyone right now." "I don't care," I said, my voice coming out sharper than I intended. "He can't just shut me out like this. I made a mistake, and I need him to understand that." She sighed, her shoulders slumping in defeat. "I'm not sure this is something you can fix with words, Kendra, but if you really want to see him, he's in his room." I didn't wait for her to say anything else. I walked past her into the house, ignoring the uncomfortable tension in the air. I knew Margaret was disappointed in me, but I didn't care. All I cared about was getting Austin back. I had to make him see how much I regretted what I had done. When I reached his room, I knocked lightly on the door. "Austin," I called, my voice soft. "Can we talk?" There was a long pause before I heard him answer. "I don't think there's anything left to say, Kendra." My heart dropped at the sound of his voice. It was calm, almost too calm, and it made the words sting even more. "Please," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "I just want to fix this. I know I hurt you, and I'm sorry. I didn't mean to say those things." I waited, holding my breath, hoping he would say something, anything, that would show me that there was a chance for us. But instead, the door cracked open, and Austin stepped into the doorway. His eyes were cold, unreadable. "I've been thinking about everything," he said quietly, his tone neutral. "And I've realized that it's not just what you said, it's everything." I felt my stomach churn. "What do you mean, everything?" "I mean," he continued, his voice growing steadier, "it's how you've treated my family for years, how you've constantly belittled them, made them feel like they're beneath us. It's how you've always put me in a position where I have to choose between you and them. It's not just one thing, Kendra. It's everything." I opened my mouth to respond, but the words caught in my throat. I didn't know how to explain myself. I didn't know how to make him understand that I didn't mean to hurt him, that it was just frustration that made me lash out. "I never wanted this," I said finally, my voice cracking. "I didn't mean to hurt you. I'm sorry for everything. I was wrong." Austin didn't say anything for a long time. He just stood there, looking at me with a mixture of sadness and disappointment in his eyes. Then, without warning, he stepped back and closed the door. I stood there in shock, my heart pounding in my chest. I didn't know what to do anymore. I had gone to him, begged him to listen, and he had shut me out. There was no coming back from this. I could feel it in my bones. It was over. The next few days were a blur. I spent my time trying to reach out to him, sending messages, making calls, but there was no response. The silence between us was deafening. I tried to keep myself busy, but nothing could fill the void that Austin had left. My thoughts constantly drifted back to that moment when he had closed the door on me. It was like a final nail in the coffin. I was starting to realize the gravity of what I had done. I had crossed a line, and I wasn't sure if there was any way to come back from it. I tried to tell myself that I could fix things, that I could somehow make him see how much I cared. But deep down, I knew I had already pushed him too far. It wasn't just the things I had said. It was everything. The way I had treated him. The way I had taken him for granted. The way I had belittled his family. I had never stopped to consider how my actions affected him. And now, I was paying the price. It wasn't until I received the letter from his lawyer that the full reality of the situation hit me. The letter was brief but clear. Austin had consulted with a lawyer and was moving forward with legal action. Divorce. The word hit me like a ton of bricks. I stared at the paper in my hands, unable to process it at first. I had pushed Austin to the brink, and now there was no going back. He was taking control of the situation, and I was left to pick up the pieces. The consequences of my actions were real now, and they were final. I could no longer ignore the reality of the situation. Austin was done, and there was nothing I could do to change it. I had lost him, and this time it wasn't just a fight that we could get over. It was the end of everything. The next few days felt like they were dragging on endlessly. Every time I checked my phone, I was filled with an anxious hope that Austin would text me, that he would finally reach out and let me explain myself. But nothing came. The silence was unbearable, and it was starting to make me question everything. I had pushed him too far, I knew that. But I couldn't understand why he was being so cold, so distant. I wasn't asking for a lot. I just wanted him to listen, to understand. But instead, he seemed to be slipping further away. I couldn't help but replay the moment when he had closed the door on me. The look on his face was burned into my memory. It was like I was a stranger to him, like he didn't even recognize me anymore. That hurt more than anything else. I had never felt so alone, even though I was in my own house. The worst part was that I knew I had no one to blame but myself. I had destroyed something that was so precious, something that had been built over years. The more I thought about it, the more I realized how much I had taken Austin for granted. I had made fun of his family, belittled them in front of him, and treated him like he wasn't good enough for me. How could I have been so blind to how much I was hurting him? How could I have been so selfish? I tried to tell myself that it was just one mistake, just one careless moment, but deep down, I knew it wasn't that simple. I had been building resentment for a long time. I had always felt like I deserved more from life, more from him, more from the world. And somewhere along the way, I had started to believe that he owed me something. That's what made my comment about his family so hurtful. I didn't just criticize them, I was making a statement about him. I was telling him that he wasn't enough, that he wasn't worthy of me. I had thought that if I pointed out their flaws, it would somehow make me feel better, but instead, it only pushed him away. And now, I was left with the consequences. Austin was gone, and I was alone. I didn't know what to do. I had never been in a situation like this before. I had always been the one in control, the one who made things happen. But now, everything felt out of my hands. I couldn't fix this. I couldn't make Austin come back. The worst part was that I wasn't even sure I could fix myself. I had spent so much time blaming him, blaming his family, blaming the world, that I had never stopped to look at my own behavior. I had been so focused on what I wanted that I hadn't cared about what he needed. And now, I was paying the price. I spent hours staring at my phone, wondering if I should send one last message. Maybe if I told him I was sorry enough times, he would understand. Maybe if I promised to change, he would come back. But I couldn't bring myself to send another message. What would be the point? He wasn't listening anymore. He had made it clear that he wasn't going to forgive me just because I apologized. He wasn't going to come back to me just because I wanted him to. I couldn't even bring myself to go back to the house we had shared for so long. Every room felt empty, like a shadow of what it used to be. The kitchen, where we had cooked together so many times, now felt cold and lifeless. The living room, where we had spent countless nights watching TV and talking, now seemed distant and unfamiliar. The house was still the same, but everything had changed. I tried to distract myself, to fill the emptiness with something else. I spent time with Sarah, but even her presence didn't offer the comfort it used to. She had always been supportive, but now it felt like she was just a reminder of everything I had lost. Every time I talked to her, I found myself justifying my actions, explaining why I had done what I did. But deep down, I knew it wasn't about her. It was about me. I was the one who had messed up, and no amount of excuses or explanations could change that. The silence was unbearable, but I didn't know how to break it. I tried calling Austin once more, but this time, it went straight to voicemail. I left a message, but I knew it wouldn't change anything. He had already made his decision. He had already walked away. A few days later, I received the legal papers. I didn't want to open them, but I knew I had to. I couldn't just ignore what was happening. I felt my heart race as I pulled the envelope open, the cold reality of it hitting me all at once. Divorce papers. Austin had filed for divorce. It wasn't just the end of a relationship, it was the end of everything I had taken for granted. I sat there, staring at the papers, feeling numb. Divorce. The word seemed foreign to me, like something that happened to other people, not to me. But here it was, in black and white. I had lost him. I didn't know what to do with myself. I had thought I could fix everything, that somehow things would go back to the way they were. But now, it was clear that there was no going back. I had crossed a line and Austin wasn't coming back. I thought about calling him again, begging him to change his mind, to come home. But I didn't. I didn't think I could handle hearing his voice, knowing that everything I had done had led to this. So, I sat there in the silence, letting the weight of everything wash over me. I had made a mistake. No, I had made a series of mistakes, and now I was paying for it. I didn't know if there was any way to fix it, if there was anything left to salvage. But I knew one thing for sure. Austin was gone, and there was nothing I could do to bring him back. The days after receiving the divorce papers were a blur. I kept staring at the stack of documents in my hands, almost expecting them to disappear, like a bad dream that I could wake up from. But no matter how many times I blinked or shook my head, they stayed there, real and undeniable. Austin had made his decision, and no matter how hard I tried to ignore it, it was final. I couldn't undo what I had done. I had pushed him to the edge, and he had finally jumped. I spent the next few days pacing around the house, trying to figure out what went wrong. I told myself I wasn't going to let this destroy me, that I would fix this, but the truth was, I didn't know where to start. I thought about going to his parents' house to beg for forgiveness, to try and convince them that I was still the woman he had married, that I hadn't meant to hurt him. But I knew deep down that nothing I said would change his mind. The more I thought about it, the more I realized that I hadn't just hurt Austin. I had hurt myself too. I had built my world around expectations, and now it was all crumbling. The silence between us was suffocating. I couldn't escape it. I tried filling the void with distractions, work, errands, anything to avoid sitting alone with my thoughts. But nothing worked. I found myself in a constant loop of regret, replaying every moment that led to this point. The comment about his family, the way I had belittled them, the way I had treated him as if he were less than me, it all came rushing back in waves, each memory like a slap to my face. I called Sarah again. I didn't know why. I guess I needed someone to tell me it wasn't too late, that somehow things could be fixed. She picked up quickly, probably sensing the desperation in my voice. "Kendra," she said softly, "I'm really sorry, but I don't think there's anything you can do now. Austin's made up his mind. You can't just walk back into his life like nothing happened." I felt a knot tighten in my stomach. "But I can fix this, right? I can apologize again, tell him how sorry I am, and he'll come back. He has to." "I don't know," she said, her voice uncertain. He's hurt, Kendra. I don't think he's coming back from this. Not after everything you said about his family. I was quiet for a long moment, feeling the truth of her words sinking in. Maybe I had pushed him too far. Maybe I had broken something beyond repair. You need to focus on yourself now, she continued, and take responsibility for what you've done. You can't just expect everything to go back to how it was. I swallowed hard, choking on the lump in my throat. I don't know how to fix this. I don't know who I am without him. I know, Sarah said quietly, but you'll have to figure it out. You can't keep living in this fantasy where everything just falls into place. You have to face what you've done. Her words were like a punch to the gut, but I knew she was right. I had spent so long pretending that things were fine, convincing myself that my resentment and frustrations were justified. I had never stopped to consider how Austin felt, how my actions might hurt him. Now I was paying the price for it. The silence in the house seemed louder now. Everywhere I looked, I saw reminders of what I had lost. The kitchen, where we had made dinner together so many times, now felt empty. The living room, once filled with laughter and conversation, now sat still and quiet. I couldn't escape it. I had ruined everything. I decided to take a step back and give Austin the space he needed. I couldn't keep chasing after him, couldn't keep begging for his forgiveness. It wasn't just about me anymore. It was about him, his healing, and his choice. He had the right to walk away, and I had to respect that, no matter how much it hurt. I spent the next few days trying to focus on work, trying to regain some semblance of normalcy. But even at the office, everything felt off. I couldn't stop thinking about Austin, about what I had done. I tried to keep up appearances, tried to act like everything was fine, but I couldn't fool myself. The reality was sinking in. He was gone, and there was nothing I could do to fix it. At night, I would sit in the quiet, replaying the moments in my head. I thought about how he used to look at me, how he used to hold me close, how he used to be so affectionate and caring. I missed him more than I had ever imagined possible. But it wasn't just about missing him. It was about the realization that I had lost something precious, something I would never get back. One evening, I decided to stop by the lawyer's office. I had to face the reality head-on. I couldn't keep avoiding it. I couldn't keep pretending that I had control over the situation. I needed to hear the truth. The lawyer was kind but firm, explaining the legal steps that would follow. Divorce proceedings, custody arrangements, financial settlements. I listened in silence, my mind reeling. The more he spoke, the more I realized how serious this had become. Austin wasn't just emotionally checking out, he was preparing to end everything. For good. I left the office feeling numb. Everything felt like it was falling apart, piece by piece. I thought about calling Austin again, asking him to talk to me, to let me explain. But deep down, I knew it was pointless. He had already made his decision. There was nothing left for me to do but accept it. When I got home that night, I sat down on the couch, my hands shaking. I wanted to scream, to cry, to do anything to release the pressure that was building inside me. But I didn't. I just sat there, staring at the walls, knowing that everything had changed. And it had. It was over. I had lost him. And it was my fault. As the days went on, I started to realize something that had been so hard to accept. I couldn't keep pretending everything would be okay. I couldn't keep expecting Austin to fix what I had broken. It was up to me now, to fix myself, to face the consequences of my actions, and to rebuild what I had destroyed. But it felt impossible. The person I had been before all of this, before the criticism, before the affair, before the endless justifications, was gone. I had to find a way to move forward, to rebuild my life without the man I thought I'd spend forever with. I just didn't know how. But one thing was clear. Austin wasn't coming back, and it was time to accept that. I had spent the past few weeks in a state of numbness, a kind of emotional paralysis that I couldn't shake. I thought I could escape it, maybe by throwing myself into work, or by pretending everything was fine, but the reality of the situation kept crashing over me in waves, each one stronger than the last. Every corner of our home seemed to carry a memory of him, every room a reminder of the life we once had. And no matter how much I tried to avoid it, the truth kept staring me in the face. I had lost Austin. I had ruined everything. The divorce papers were now officially filed. They were no longer just a distant threat. They were my reality. I had never imagined I'd find myself in a situation like this. I had always been so sure of myself, so confident that I could control everything around me. But here I was, powerless, watching my marriage fall apart. It felt like a slap in the face, a hard reminder that life doesn't always bend to our will. I couldn't blame Austin for what he was doing. He had every right to walk away, to take control of his own future. I had pushed him to the brink, and now he was doing what he had to do. I had always taken him for granted, thinking he would be there no matter what. I was wrong. And now I was paying the price for my arrogance. I tried to keep myself busy, but nothing seemed to fill the void. I had a few meetings at work, but my mind wasn't on the job. I couldn't concentrate. Every time I looked at the clock, I found myself wondering what Austin was doing. Was he thinking about me? Was he missing me at all? Or had he already moved on, leaving me in the dust? The uncertainty gnawed at me, a constant reminder that I was no longer the most important person in his life. One evening, after yet another quiet day spent in the house, I decided to go for a walk. Maybe the fresh air would clear my mind, or maybe I just needed to be alone for a while. As I walked through the familiar streets of our neighborhood, I couldn't help but feel the weight of the situation pressing down on me. I had spent so much time looking down on Austin's family, making fun of their modest lifestyle. But now, standing alone on the sidewalk, I realized that what I had once seen as weakness was actually strength. His family had something I had never appreciated: unity, love, and unwavering support, something I had taken for granted and ultimately thrown away. The walk did little to clear my mind. If anything, it only made me more aware of how empty everything felt without Austin by my side. I thought about the things I had said to him, the harsh words that had pushed him away. I had tried to blame him for everything that wasn't working, but in the end, I was the one who had failed us. I had built this image of myself as someone who deserved more, someone who should be elevated above others. But now, it felt hollow, like a costume I had been wearing to hide the fact that I was scared. Scared of being vulnerable, scared of not being enough, scared of losing control. When I returned home that evening, I didn't expect much to change. But as I walked into the house, I saw something I hadn't seen in weeks: his shoes by the door, Austin's shoes, the ones he always left there when he came home. My heart skipped a beat, and for a moment I wondered if he had come back, if he had somehow changed his mind. I rushed to the bedroom, my pulse quickening, but the bed was still empty. His side was untouched, just as it had been for days. The shoes, the small things, were nothing more than a cruel reminder of what I had lost. The house felt even emptier than before, like a shell of what it used to be. I knew I couldn't stay here, surrounded by reminders of him, without losing myself completely. So I packed a bag. I didn't know where I was going, maybe a hotel, maybe a friend's house, but I just needed to get away. I needed to clear my mind, to think about what I was going to do with my life. The life I had built was no longer mine, and I had no idea how to move forward. I spent the night in a small, sterile hotel room, lying awake and staring at the ceiling. I had nothing but my thoughts to keep me company, and they were relentless. Every mistake I had made, every word I had said, played over and over again in my head. I couldn't stop thinking about Austin. I thought about the man he was, the patient, understanding person who had always been there for me, even when I didn't deserve it. And I thought about how I had taken that for granted, how I had used his kindness as a way to elevate myself, to make myself feel superior. And now he was gone. I couldn't help but cry. The tears were a mixture of regret, anger, and sorrow. Sorrow for losing him, regret for hurting him, and anger at myself for not realizing what I had until it was too late. Austin had always been the steady force in my life. He had been the one I leaned on when things got tough. But now I realized I had never truly leaned on him for the right reasons. I had used him as a crutch, and now he was gone, leaving me with nothing but the consequences of my actions. The next morning, I woke up with a headache, feeling more exhausted than ever. I checked my phone, half hoping that I would see a message from Austin, but there was nothing. The silence remained. I called my lawyer. I knew I needed to face the legal side of things, even if I didn't want to. The divorce papers had been filed, and I had to go through the motions. I had to face the fact that Austin wasn't coming back, and there was nothing I could do to change that. The lawyer's voice was calm, efficient, as he outlined the steps I would need to take. Custody arrangements, division of assets, alimony, all the things I had never thought I'd have to deal with. But now they were my reality, and the reality was that I had ruined everything. When the call ended, I sat there for a long time, just listening to the silence. There was no more pretending. There was no more hoping that things would magically get better. I had burned every bridge, and now I was left to rebuild from the ashes. But how? How could I rebuild something that had taken years to break? How could I rebuild myself after everything I had done? I didn't know. And that scared me more than anything. I spent the next few weeks trying to sort through the wreckage of my life. I sold the house, knowing that it was a symbol of everything that had gone wrong. I moved into a small apartment, a temporary place, just to get away from the memories of Austin. But no matter where I went, I couldn't escape the truth. I had lost him, and I had no one to blame but myself. I tried to reach out to friends, but it felt hollow. No one knew the depth of what I was feeling. No one understood the loneliness that had settled deep within me. I had pushed everyone away, including the one person who had loved me unconditionally. And now, there was no one left to fill the emptiness. I thought about what Sarah had said. You need to focus on yourself now. At first, I had dismissed it, but now I understood. I needed to rebuild, not just my life, but myself. I needed to find a way to forgive myself and accept that I had made mistakes. That wasn't going to be easy, but I had no other choice. I had to move forward, no matter how difficult it was. And so I did. Slowly. But I did. It wasn't easy. It wasn't a smooth process. There were days when I felt like giving up, days when the pain of losing Austin seemed unbearable. But I kept going. I kept moving forward, one small step at a time. And somewhere along the way, I started to find peace. It wasn't the peace I had imagined before, when I thought everything would just magically fix itself. But it was something real, something I could hold on to. The truth was, I had lost a part of myself in the process, but I was learning to find it again. And that was the hardest, most important thing I had to do. Because in the end, the only person who could fix my life was me. And I was ready to start. Ready, but unsure. Ready, but afraid, but it was a start. And that was enough.